After skipping the second generation model in favor of the A-Class Limousine, Mercedes is bringing the CLA nameplate back to India with this third generation model in 2026. Like the original, the new CLA is sleek. Like the original, it has a 4-door coupe body style. And like the original, it has a sportier interior. But unlike the original, this one is all electric. You know, I remember the launch of the first generation CLA like it was yesterday, even though it actually happened closer to 12 years ago. Yes, that is reflective of my age, but there's also a very good reason for that, and that's because the first CLA was an absolute stunner. It was like nothing else we'd seen for that segment at the time, and it was truly revolutionary in design. Now, for the younger viewers amongst you, just a really quick history lesson. It all started with a car called the CLS, which was essentially an E-Class in a sportier, low-slung, swoopy body. That was really successful. So Mercedes thought, when there was time to develop a new compact front-wheel drive range of cars, why don't we apply that same logic to the sedan of these compact cars? And thus the CLA was born. However, when you take a low-slung, sporty, coupe body style and put it on a compact car, that's going to create some compromises, and they were most notably to the ground clearance and the rear seat space. So let's hope those are things that Mercedes has sorted out with this new generation car. Now, before we get into the looks in earnest, I got to tell you a little bit about the platform. It's a new generation platform called MMA, and though it does support hybrid powertrains, which the CLA also gets overseas, it is EV first, and that shows in the design, I feel. There is, of course, no conventional grille. You just get this black plastic section over here, and it's got 142 illuminated 3-pointed stars inside of it. Also illuminated is the light bar that joins these headlamps. They're very curvy headlamps, no straight lines here. There are 3-pointed stars inside these headlamps though. They are multi-beam adaptive LED headlamps. And overall, it does have this sort of angry, frowny look, which has been the trend with modern Mercedes cars, especially the AMGs more recently. There's a little chrome strip down there reminding you that this is a luxury vehicle, and because this is the AMG line package, which is the only one you get here in India, there are these aggressive straights down the side. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the front end. I feel like it looks a bit too busy, and maybe sharper headlamps without the connecting light bar would have done the trick. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Underneath here, there is actually a frunk, 101 liters of it, which Mercedes wants to point out that is the first time ever featured on a Mercedes in 90 years. Now, what's important to note while looking at the side of this car is that it's no longer a compact car in any sense. I mean, it's nearly 4.7 meters long and nearly 2.8 meters in the wheelbase. That's awfully close to the current C-Class. Now, as for ground clearance, yes, we noted in our review overseas that it was very low. And though Mercedes hasn't quoted a figure for the India car, they have said that they've done an India-specific suspension with raised ground clearance. And yeah, it does seem pretty substantial. And in our time driving today, though we didn't go over anything too serious, it cleared all speed breakers with no issue at all. Now, the wheels, they are a set of 18 inches with these very aero-efficient looking alloy wheels. And the door handles are flush. Yes, that might be a problem in China very, very soon. As before, you get the sloping coupe-like roofline and a CLA trademark, frameless windows. Now here at the rear is where you can see the true effect of this 4-door coupe body style. I mean, look at it. This is the top of the roof and it just melts seamlessly into the tailgate. That allows this car to have a drag coefficient of just 0.21, and of course, as you know, aerodynamics is all important for efficiency in an EV. Now, as for the actual styling back here, you'll see there is a little bit, it's not a spoiler so much as a little deck on the top of the tailgate over there. Down here you'll find more 3-pointed star motifs in the tail lamps surrounded by a circular light element, and yes, they're joined too, except this time it's not a continuous band of LEDs but rather individual LEDs in this light bar over here. Here you have the 250 badge, and it's quite a chunky rear end, but they've disguised it pretty well, I think. There's a lot of black treatment down there and a bit of chrome too, which does well to disguise the bulk of this rear end. I think the rear is much better executed than the front. It too is unlike any other Merc on the market right now, but in my opinion the elements come together much better here. Now if you push the three-pointed star and pop this open, you'll find 405 liters of boot space, but frankly it actually looks a little bit more than that. It's just a very well shaped boot. It is a bit of a high loading lip, again that bulky rear end, but once you load stuff over, there's loads of space inside there, and you can even fold 40 20 40 for a bit of flexibility to let some of your luggage into the cabin if you really need a whole lot more space. Now before we step inside, I gotta point out one cool little detail. I'm sure you've noticed there are two cameras here on the wing mirror. One's sort of the usual surround view 360-degree camera, and one is pointing backwards. That's because this car has an entirely new generation of ADAS compared to previous Mercs. And that means it's got a total of 8 exterior cameras, 12 ultrasonic parking sensors and 5 radars. What that means is that it gets level 2 autonomous driving out of the box, but can be upgraded to level 2 plus further down the line via an OTA update. Now, what do you think about the way the new CLA looks? Tell us down in the comments. We'd be very excited to hear from you. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Autocar India. Now, as with the exterior, we got to reference the older CLA when it comes to the interior. The old CLA, and indeed all its compact brethren, did have a distinctly different and sporty feeling interior compared to the larger Mercs, which tended to be more restrained and elegant. And that seems to be the case here too. There's no greater evidence of that than these seats, which, like in the old car, are these sporty bucket seats with fixed headrests that really hug you both in the abdomen and in the seat. They're finished in black, white and red, and I think they were smart to put the center in the dark color to avoid staining, and also in fabric rather than leatherette, which is on the outside over there. Other than that though, there are some newfangled things, and yeah, we got to start with this dashboard. No longer textures and materials, it is just all black plastic, and that is the way things are going. Mercedes said it's angled at the perfect 6 degrees, but it still does feel like a very upright slab of plastic to me. In overseas markets, you would get a passenger screen. I'm kind of glad that they haven't done that for India, because I find them unnecessary and unnecessarily distracting. Instead, what you get is some illuminated stars that sync up with the ambient lighting for the rest of the car. But in front of me here is a 10.25-inch driver's display, and over here is a big 14-inch touchscreen. Now, the problem with these big singular plastic binnacles is that things don't often line up. We've criticized cars like Maruti Suzuki's for it, and we have to bring that up here too. The screens don't quite line up, and there are loads of black bezels all around, and that just doesn't feel rich or special enough to me, at least. Let us know what you think down in the comments. This black panel also houses a pair of rotary AC vents at the outsides. That's been a modern Mercedes trend, and it looks really cool. They're high quality vents, they click open and shut, and they do also have some ambient lighting located inside them. Down here also a very nice set of aluminium look and feel AC vents, which feel like they're really high quality and click into place nicely. Disappointingly, absolutely no buttons on the dashboard. Your AC is in the touchscreen. It is at least hard coded to the 0 layer, and it's always right up front. And even if you have an app that overrides the Mercedes MV/OS interface, you can easily swipe up and get your 0 layer menu items down there, and that's a handy feature. Not all cars are doing that. There are a few shortcuts down here, but they're sort of touch buttons for your drive modes, your cameras, volume and microphone, and there is a hard button for the hazard lights. Thank goodness for that. Now over here you get this raised center console, which again we've seen in a lot of Merc EVs lately. Now I'm not such a big fan of that because, as we know, it's not necessary. There's no gearbox down here, and it only serves in this compact car to foul with your elbow when you're steering the car. But it does at least serve a use in that everything you need is within access. Your wireless phone charger is up here. There's 2 really big cup holders over here, and there is a hidden storage bay down there. There is a more exposed storage bay down here with a little strap and 2 USB Type-C ports. And frankly, I'd have just preferred it if all this was down there. But that's just me. Again, tell me in the comments what you think. One familiar bit is the steering wheel, which seems to have come in virtually unchanged from before. It does still have touch controls, which is a bit of a disappointment, but there are at least indents to help you find it and know where your thumb is moving while you're driving. Suppose the little things. There are also, however, a new design for the seat controls, which I'm glad to report are back to being physical movable buttons and not that touch sensitive stuff that you saw in the previous generation of cars. It's also a similarly weird thing with the window switches because there are only two. Yep, the front windows are controlled from here, and to control the rear windows, you have to press a button that says rear and use these same two buttons. It's just an extra step and feels a little bit amiss in a Mercedes-Benz. Another interesting control feature are the way they've handled the stalks. Now, as always with the Mercedes, the gear selector or drive state selector is this stalk, which means this stalk has left to do both the wipers and the lights. It's a little complicated, but once you get used to it, it's absolutely fine. Interestingly here though, to start the car, there is no start button. You can't even do it just by pressing the brake like in some other EVs. Nope, you press the brake and hit park. And that's what switches the car on, and you hit park twice and switches it off. You can also choose drive and reverse that way. That's pretty standard. But interestingly, there are no paddle shifters. There are no gears obviously, but to control the regen, the same stalk gets pushed back and forward. That's a novel way of doing things. And once you get used to it, again, it's pretty intuitive when you're on the move. I have to say though that again, like with the old CLA, quality is really good, but not quite up there with the bigger Mercs. The plastic that you do see like underneath here for the glove box, it's just not as rich as say something you'd find in a C or an E-Class. That is a bit of a shame, but I think it's something that's not bad enough to be a deal breaker in a car like this. With new cars these days, we find ourselves spending more and more time talking about the screens because they just keep adding more of them. But that really needs to be the case here because of what's behind those screens. It's a whole new E&E architecture from Mercedes that reduces the number of controllers from around 48 to just 4. Yup, 4 supercomputers as Mercedes calls them, running NVIDIA chipsets that control every function of the car, from infotainment to ADAS to the actual driving. And this supposedly makes communicating with the hardware a lot quicker. It's all a bit complicated, so for now, let's have a look at how it works in everyday use. For one, Big Brother's always watching. There is a camera over there. The reason it's there is to not only provide security features for the car when it's parked, but also to let you do video conferencing. Yes, this car has every conceivable productivity app, including meetings, and I can't think of anything more dreary than to attend a Zoom or a Teams call while I'm in the car. This is my sacred space. But anyway, that is one function of it. You can also take selfies like you can in the E-Class. This screen is the new 14-inch unit, and as you can see, it is incredibly slick to move. There's not too much lag at all. This is the seat menu, which also contains the memory function. So yeah, if you like a seat setting and you want to keep it for later, you have to go into here and change it. The seats are heated, but they are not ventilated, unfortunately. They are, however, massaging, but I looked at the brochure and this is an add-on digital option that you have to pay extra for. It does have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay wirelessly, which as you can see shrinks the screen down a little bit. That's not so great, but the idea is to not use that and use Mercedes' own system because they really have upped their game in this area. For one, there is the digital assistant, which is actually 3 digital assistants rolled into one. It includes ChatGPT, Gemini, and Bing, which Mercedes says really gives you a comprehensive AI virtual assistant that you can have conversations with and not just ask mundane questions. You want to give it a try? Let's go. Hey Mercedes.
Hello, I'm Mercedes, your voice assistant. Would you like to know more about what I can do for you?
No, but could you please tell me what the weather is going to be like for the rest of the day here in Bengaluru?
Currently it is mostly sunny in Bengaluru with a temperature of 29 degrees Celsius. Today it will be mostly sunny with temperatures between 20 and 31 degrees Celsius.
Okay, where is a good place for me to get Chinese dinner tonight in Bengaluru?
Memories of China is a sleek, modern Chinese restaurant in a hotel featuring a grand chandelier, bar, and open kitchen. The service and the staff here are exemplary, so friendly and efficient. Would you like to call them to make a reservation for tonight?
What is the average price of dinner for two at this restaurant?
The prices are very high. Would you like me to look for something more affordable?
Yes, please.
Several results available. Where shall we go?
And there are a host of apps, some of which you have to pay extra for, including some games that you can even play with a Bluetooth controller. Now this screen is a lot simpler than that one, but that's okay because it shows you all the necessary stuff and exactly what you'd want to see while driving your electric car. Yes, it's in a rather traditional looking set of two dials, which I particularly like. I'm a bit of a traditionalist that way, but it does have all the necessary information. You got your state of charge. You've also got how you're producing or recuperating power. You can even see what regen mode you've got it in while you're driving along. And if you don't like the traditional view, you can switch to this one, which is the sort of ADAS view that shows you 3D representations of the cars around you. Look, it's another CLA right in front of me. So really, it's the front seat where all the action is, but we'll have to go check out what it's like in the back too. And spoiler alert, the experience is not quite as good. Now we've seen how they've tried to tackle the ground clearance issue in this car, but when it comes to the backseat experience, as you can tell, it's probably not the car you want to buy as a chauffeur-driven customer, just like the old CLA. Now it is of course a huge improvement on the old CLA, but still, considering how much the car has grown, space in here is still not excellent. Knee room is actually pretty good. That said, to my driving position, I'm just under 5'8", and that's not too bad. Headroom, however, is tight. I'm okay, but anybody taller than me will be very close to this glass roof, which I'll get back to in a moment. Moreover, there's absolutely no space to tuck your feet under the front seat. That's about as far as it goes. And as you can tell, I'm sat in quite a knees up position, and that is truly the most apparent thing in this back seat. Yes, the floor is flat, but it is notably higher thanks to the battery pack underneath. And yeah, there's not much thigh support to speak of at all. You're sat a little scrunched up, and even the backrest is really quite upright. The seats, like the ones up front, are upholstered in this black Alcantara with a bit of leather around it and contrast red stitching, and it does feel quite sporty. But again, this is a bench that's best for two. You can see that in the contours. It's quite flat in the center, but yeah, it's not particularly wide, so a third passenger will feel really cramped up over here. Moreover, these are quite small windows. As you can see, the glass only goes down halfway, so that's all it's ever going to open, and there are no window blinds. Then there's the big glass roof. Now yes, it does let in a lot of light, and Mercedes say it's heat shielded and tinted, which it is, but I do feel that it is going to let in a lot of heat into the cabin because there is no shade whatsoever. You cannot close this. The glass itself doesn't open, and that's just fine, but there should have been some sort of shade. Over prolonged exposure to the sun, it's already getting quite warm, and I only feel that it's going to make the AC work a whole lot harder. Incidentally, these rear AC vents, they don't seem to be extremely effective. They do cool the cabin, but I don't think they cool it fast enough. You also get a pair of USB Type-C ports over here. So this isn't a car for the chauffeur driven. I think Mercedes is perfectly comfortable with that. This is a car for the owner driven to sit up front there with occasional backseat use, and for that I think it's just fine. Time then to get back into the driver's seat and experience what this new generation Mercedes EV has to offer from behind the wheel. It's very clear that advancements have been made even compared to Merc's own latest and greatest EVs like the EQS. There's something more sophisticated, more tangible, more characterful about this EV's propulsion. It's hard to put into words, but it feels like it has evolved, and it's far less one-dimensional than the EVs of old. For a start, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm actually glad that it doesn't have excessive amounts of power. 272 horsepower is plenty, and it's going to the rear wheels, so it's well balanced and well channeled. There is also a dual motor all-wheel drive version with something like 350 horsepower available overseas, but that's not the one we have in India. Mercedes, however, has just announced there will also be a less powerful CLA 200 for India with a slightly lower 224 horsepower output and a much smaller 58 kilowatt-hour battery. Then you start to notice finer things. There is a bit of nuance, there is a bit of ebb and flow to the power delivery. It's not just a one shotgun shell to the face with all that power and all that torque. And it rolls in and rolls back out as you lift off. Now, there are no revs to speak of course, but the way the power is delivered, it feels natural, it feels progressive, and I can't tell you how much of a welcome change that is an EV. But don't get me wrong, it's not at all slow. If you stamp your foot down hard, it will deploy all that power very, very fast. Mercedes hasn't overcomplicated things. There are just 3 drive modes, 4 if you count individual. The others are Eco, Comfort and Sport. And there are subtle but noticeable differences between the 3. That applies not just to the power delivery, to the steering as well, which too, by the way, is very fluid in its movement. But this to me is a sign of a mature electric powertrain, a well-honed electric powertrain. Whichever mode you're in, should you need it, there's always all the power on tap. It might not come as urgently, but it's always there. You never feel shortchanged in eco mode, and you never feel too highly strung in sport mode either. Overtaking out on the highway is a breeze, and I am still in eco mode. Should I change it to sport? And yeah, things are definitely more brisk. The steering too has some weight to it now, and it's a welcome weight. It also, again, does a lot to make you feel like this is a real car, a proper driving tool, and not just an appliance. Now, let me talk about the driving position for just 1 second. At first, when you get in, you might think that this dashboard with all the screens and the plastic is a little bit too high because it's upright, it feels imposing. But even for a short person like myself, it takes not too long with a few adjustments of the seat to get used to it. The pillars are not too thick. The mirrors are kind of small actually. I wish they were just a little bit larger. And the view out the front and the sides is good. Shame you can't say the same about the view out the back through that slot of a rear windshield. But that said, it's not as apparent as it is in the back, but you can tell even in these front seats that the floor is very high. You can never quite get your seat to your legs, to the pedals in that same angle that you normally would. And especially when you're sitting in the front passenger seat, you'll notice that you're sat in something of a knees up position. We also got to talk about refinement, because apart from a little bit of wind noise, a very small amount of wind noise, this thing is really, really quiet. You must remember that aerodynamics contribute not only to efficiency but also to refinement. The smoother the air flows over the car, the less noise it makes inside the cabin. And speaking of smoother, the new CLA actually gets a 2-speed gearbox, much like the Porsche Taycan. The first gear is for brisk acceleration and is used most of the time, while the second is for highway cruising and longer range. And if you pay attention, you can actually feel it switching over. Now, usually when a European car has been given India-specific suspension, that usually involves raising and stiffening the suspension to cope with our roads, that absolutely destroys the ride quality because the car just becomes like a brick. But that hasn't been the case here, and in fact there's quite a compliant ride on offer in this CLA. There's minimal movement inside the cabin, whether it's over small bumps like that or big craters, which we've also gone through today. And the car remains incredibly composed at highway speeds. And that becomes all the more impressive when you consider how heavy this car is. Battery electric vehicles are always heavy thanks to those batteries, and you need to really stiffen up the suspension, especially in a sedan, to avoid bottoming out on speed breakers. Now, we got to talk about the big headline figure in the room, and that is the WLTP range of 792 kilometers. Yes, I know that is an official rating designed for Europe, and real world Indian conditions are going to deliver a far lower range number. But even if you knock 200 kilometers off that figure, you're still left with close to 600 kilometers of real world range. And frankly, with the numbers that the car has been showing today, I genuinely think that's possible. Even after a long day of shooting and driving, we're almost at the end of it, it's still showing something like 78, 79% of battery charge left. Wow. We'll have to wait until we get the CLA back home for one of our Autocar India real world range tests. But I have a sneaking suspicion that this could just be one of the most efficient cars we've tested. Incidentally, the CLA 200 with a smaller 58 kWh battery is rated at a much lower 542 km on the same WLTP cycle. What I also found pretty interesting is that the CLA EV has lost none of its predecessor's keen handling traits. Now, the old car, as many would remember, had really stiff-kneed ride quality, but the trade-off was that handling was amazing. This car rides pretty well, and the handling is still rather good. As I said, it's got a weighty and progressive steering once you put it into sport mode, and that really helps. We were up in Nandi Hills earlier, and this thing just handled those corners like a dream. It doesn't, of course, offer you the same sort of talkative feel as an ICE car. It's not just to do with the engine, but the way power is delivered through corners. But despite all that, it felt like a nice rear drive sedan. And that's not something we've been able to say about an entry-level Mercedes or an entry-level luxury car in a very long time. But that's just the thing, isn't it? This car no longer feels entry-level. Where the original CLA skimped on some features, the new one does not. It should have maybe had ventilated front seats and rear window blinds would not go amiss. But that aside, it really is jam-packed. More than that though, it's the mature and sophisticated way it drives that really tells you this CLA has truly grown up and can confidently sit shoulder to shoulder with its bigger siblings, be they ICE or EVs. It rides well, it steers well, and the electric powertrain is genuinely the most advanced we've seen on any Mercedes to date. Yes, including the EQS. It's refined and measured, and the power delivery almost has some character. And that's before we get to the astonishing range. Bringing the CLA in as an EV first feels like a statement from Mercedes. This is no longer a Merc on a budget or your easy ticket to the three-pointed star. It's a standout EV that can hold its own with the heavy hitters, not just against giants like Tesla and BYD, but among its own prolific stablemates as well.